I'm switching to a red dot, 30 rounds in the mag. Let's go, baby.
This is amazing.
Oh my god. I'm closing in.
Oh, there's so many parachutes.
Guys,
dude.
I'm closing in.
How'd you get out of
Oh
it?
god.
How'd you get out of it?
I'm literally... Wait, here we go.
Oh.
I'm in it. Oh my god.
I've been yeeted miles.
Oh my god. Deployed my parachute. I'm out of it.
Oh my god! Oh, this is actually ridiculous.
Holy shit.
Crap.
This is insane, guys.
So if I go back into it and cut my parachute... Oh, it's throwing me out. It's throwing me out. Oh my god.
I've been trying to rocket a plane.
Oh, the jet just went in it. Oh my god. You can keep throwing yourself through it or round it and then pop your parachute again.
Because it's picked up debris from the map.
Yeah, it throws it at you and it hurts.
Oh my! I need to get
Oh,
a kill in the air.
There's a container. There's a container in it.
Yeah.
Give me more.
Mate, somebody's car just got thrown
Oh, I
around.
just got killed. I just got killed.
I shot someone mid-air. This is insane. This is absolutely 100% insane.
That's without a shadow of a doubt the best thing I've ever seen in a video game.
Yeah, this is amazing. And I'm definitely not destroying other people's gameplay moment by shooting them as they follow it. I've killed 2 people now.
That is single-handedly, to this day, the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life.
In a video game, that is incredible.
That is what you call breaking the barrier.
That is absolutely incredible. Welcome to the Battlefield 2042 beta. Today I've got some gameplay for you, captured as part of a behind-the-scenes event that EA ran. I got to play for about 3.5 hours with the beta build, and I've got some thoughts and impressions to share with you. The headline, though, is that this slice of Battlefield 2042 that DICE is giving us as the beta, it's spectacular. It's on a scale that we've never seen before, but it's a bit rough around the edges. Let's get into it. The build that I got to play on in the playtest was around 2 months old, so the gameplay you're watching right now, it's not representative of the current state of Battlefield 2042 because development is 2 months further on, and it won't be representative of the final build that we're all going to play in November, but the build itself, at least for me, it ran pretty well. Performance was smooth for the most part of the playtest. I do have a top tier rig though, so keep that in mind. I didn't have an FPS counter active, unfortunately, but the game felt relatively smooth. There were a few stutters and jitters here and there throughout the playtest. Most of those happened, though, in the first couple of matches, and then things sort of smoothed out from that point onwards. The more that I played this build, the more obvious it became that the build wasn't quite up to date. So various destroyed elements of cover and debris around the map, they would like crash into the ground and like sort of bounce around in a weird way. There was an attack chopper that got blown up in front of me, and then the carcass hit the ground. And then all of the textures and the items started popping in and out, and they were like disappearing and reappearing. It was kind of jarring. The revive animation, it has this ridiculously long transition from you being in third person, looking at your reviver, to actually being able to fully regain control of your soldier. It takes a really long time. Again, quite jarring. Some parachuting players would have open parachutes stuck on them whilst they were running around, and that would give away their position. If you use the elevators in some of the buildings, friendly players in third person would then clip down through the floor as it started to travel upwards, even though on their screen that wasn't happening, it was happening on mine. So there were plenty of visual bugs during the playtest. And also, something that's really quite important, at least I think in Battlefield games, is the audio. Here, it's quite muted, you could say. Ignoring the part of the match where the tornado just rips on through, then the audio's pretty terrifying, but during normal gameplay, I found that the ambient noise of the map, the distant shooting, the soldier callouts, everything kind of felt a little bit flat. And then when I looked at the waveforms of the audio tracks when I was editing the video together, everything did really look on the quiet side. There wasn't much distinction between like me shooting and me running around. Everything was kind of just like at the same volume in the middle somewhere. So it was hard to sort of distinctly pick things out sometimes. I then tried to play with the war tape setting, which sort of like compresses the audio, and it makes quiet things sound louder, and louder things are compressed down to... So everything's kind of like the same volume, but louder, and it's really harsh. And to me, that actually made the experience better overall, but when you get a chance to play the beta, see what you think. I didn't think the audio was particularly stellar in this build, though. With that all being said, Battlefield 2042's orbital map with 128 players is absolutely insane. Battlefield moving from 64 to 128 players, that is something I think we've all wanted to see for quite some time. But I myself was always a bit apprehensive that DICE wouldn't be able to do it effectively and find a balance in all of the gameplay that's happening. Well, I'm happy to report that they've done a really good job here on Orbital. The map has several distinct sectors where different gameplay takes center stage. So you've got the A and the F sectors towards the outskirts of the map. That's going to favor players who like to use vehicles to get around, and then hopping out of those vehicles to engage in infantry combat once you get closer to buildings. Then the B sector is the huge rocket assembly building that brings in massive vertical gameplay on the roof and through various structures inside the building as well. And then, of course, that leads to vehicles flying up like helicopters and jets, strafing around the top, trying to kill people. It's a perfect point for people to sit on B and then parachute to other points of the map. It's like a really good hop-off point. Then the C and D sectors are like either side of the big tarmac runway that's in the middle of the map. They're your quintessential combined arms locations. There are a pair of objectives in each sector, and it leads to gunfight locations where infantry and vehicles, they can really work together to snuff out the enemy. And those flags in those sectors were changing hands all the time during the playtest. So some really good areas if you like infantry and vehicle gunfights. And then finally, you've got the rocket site in the E sector, which is just part of this huge open runway section where vehicles are king out in the open until you reach the rocket site, and then infantry can come in and start moving around the pathways and using all the hiding spots that you can then use to control the point. In between all of these points within the sectors, I will be honest, there's not a huge amount of what I'd call solid cover, but there's definitely a big emphasis here on using your vehicle call-in tablet to hop into a jeep or something like that to get you to another point. Some areas like the C and D sectors, the flags are kind of close enough together with different routes that you can take that it's not necessary to use vehicles. The distances are a little bit smaller. But let's say if you wanted to move from the vehicle at the rocket assembly point, which is one side of the map, B sector, all the way over to the rocket launch site, the E sector on the other side, that is a huge amount of open ground to cover on foot. You're probably just going to die the moment you start running across, so it's better to call in a vehicle and shorten your journey. When it comes to gunplay, I was really quite impressed with what DICE has done for the most part. When spawning through the map menu, you can choose a different primary, secondary, and gadget weapon for your specialists, and then when you hit the ground in-game, you get access to the plus system, which allows you to change attachments on the fly whilst you're playing. Now, I didn't see any options built into the spawn menu that would allow you to customize your weapons before you spawn. Maybe I missed something, I'm not 100% sure, but that is something that a lot of previous Battlefield games have relied on, and admittedly, I didn't ask any of the developers if this is just something that had been disabled for the beta and for the playtest, so apologies there. This did put a huge amount of emphasis on the plus system, however, and when looking at it, picking from just a few options for optics, grips, magazines, and barrels, it definitely feels like some of the element of the customization flow has been disabled or hidden from the playtest. But with that being said, the plus system is awesome, and I found myself using it all the time. Switching between magazine types for extending the range or increasing the damage at the expense of bullet count, switching from a long barrel to a suppressor to keep me off the mini-map, switching from shorter to longer range optics to be better placed to take somebody down. It all just felt really, really slick. And I was using it constantly. Moving from point to point in a sector, I would be switching my attachments to try and curate the gun to the environment that I was in. It was really, really cool. I will be very interested to see how you can control what elements sit within the plus system UI though. So different optics, different barrels, magazines, things like that. As although it was great having all those different attachment options, I could see just how important it would be to have the right options on the plus menu when you're playing on different maps and when you're in different environments. Going back to the gunplay, the recoil felt pretty good for the most part. Some burst firing was needed after a few shots to keep things on target, unless you were at close range where you could pretty much full auto somebody. Time to kill felt pretty good, not too fast, not too slow. As we get more time to play with the beta, we'll get a better feel for the guns, but overall, they felt really punchy, they felt weighty, It's good when you're moving around to kill people at close range, mid-range. I will say at longer ranges, the bullet velocity felt kind of slow on most of the guns, and especially the snipers. If you've played a lot of Warzone, you'll know how fast the bullet velocity is over there. And in fact, in Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1, the sniping bullet velocity was really, really fast. It didn't feel anywhere near as fast in Battlefield 2042, and that's not a problem. It's just something that you might have to get used to. One concern that I do have with like the gunplay and the character system is the armor plating. Some players have armor plates applied to them, and having spoken to one of the devs, it seems that armor adds 25 HP on top of the 100 HP of your standard soldier. It does show up in your HUD on your screen if you have an armor plate on, but I'm not really a fan of armor because it creates these disparities in the time to kill against enemies, and you often have no idea that an enemy has an armor plate on until you started shooting them. I did notice that there were some hit markers, I think, for breaking armor, and they would show up on the screen, but before that point, it wasn't clear to me that I was shooting at an enemy that had armor, and so I didn't know how many more bullets or consistent shooting it might take to kill that enemy. We actually had this issue in Battlefield 4 and Battlefield Hardline. Players could use the defensive perk, and that would apply more health to your soldier, and there was no significant identifier to you that you were shooting an armored player. And to me, it didn't really seem like a feature that the game really needs. Having played Warzone for 18 months where you could find this magical box called stopping power that would make your bullets hit harder, this is kind of in the same realm. You can just find armor plates, put them on, and suddenly you've got 25 extra HP, and you might end up winning gunfights that perhaps you shouldn't win. And is that not then, well, it's not very fair to the person that was shooting at you because they had no idea that you had an armor plate. Not everybody will have armor. Some people will. There's no way to know until you start shooting. It's harder to read a situation, and it makes gunfights that more random and unpredictable, which just isn't a good thing in my book. But let me know what you think in the comments, because it might be a divisive issue. And then just to finish up, I'm going to talk about the tornado and the rocket launch here on Orbital, because they can kind of happen very close together, similar times. Sometimes the rocket goes up, sometimes it explodes, sometimes the tornado's there, sometimes it's not. So just a quick explanation. Basically, the tornado doesn't always turn up. We played, I think, 6 or 7 matches, and it turned up once. It could turn up more frequently for you. It seems to just be random, but when it did turn up, it was absolutely awesome. But for anyone that's not interested in interacting with it, the map is so big that you don't have to go anywhere near it if you don't want to. Plus, so many people were attached to the tornado, flying through it, you know, throwing their helis in there, or in a car and drove into it and it threw you around the map or whatever. It kind of distracted completely from the battle that was happening. And I think the other team realized that, and they went around and captured a couple of the sectors whilst we weren't paying any attention. So it's definitely a game changer, and I feel like it coming in here is exactly for that reason. If you remember the behemoths from Battlefield 1, it kind of feels similar to that. They come in to try and change the tide of the battle, and the tornado is such a big distraction that it definitely did it during the match that I played. And then for the rocket launch, players can control how that goes. So the rocket is kind of like sitting there fueling up at the beginning of the map, and then sort of partway through, the arms come down off the sides where it's finished being fueled up. And at that point, you can actually attack the rocket, and you can start to shoot it. You don't get a lot of feedback from it to sort of let you know if you're gonna explode it or not. But the more damage you do to it, the higher the chance is that it will explode either on the pad or during the launch procedure, and then it will come crashing down on the map. Or if you don't do enough damage, it will take off during the match, and it will go up into the sky. Apparently, you can ride on the top of the rocket, and then you'll get to a certain point up in the sky, and eventually you'll get killed. But some people were trying to, like, grapple hook onto the top of it. You need an almost perfect shot to be able to do that. It's going to be very difficult to do, but I didn't feel that either of the events that were happening here hugely detracted from what was going on, other than the fact that this was the first time we'd seen them, so everyone was paying attention to what was going on. But I think after a few times you've played through, it won't massively distract from the gameplay, and you can choose to ignore the things if that's what you want to do. So that's pretty much it for my first impressions of the Battlefield 2042 beta on Orbital. Overall, like I said, spectacular, absolutely incredible in some places, but rough around the edges. You are going to notice some visual artifacts, you are going to notice some bugs, things that shouldn't happen that do happen, there are things missing that we need more context about that we don't fully understand yet. But overall, I think you're going to enjoy the experience. I think you'll have fun playing it, and you'll definitely know by the end of the beta whether this is a game for you or not. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you all in the next one.